So about 5 or 6 years ago, I created a 3-part series on video game Mahjong that included an in-depth tutorial about the game. And I thought, you know what, that was a very long watch in 3 parts. So I wanted to come on and really display some of the basic strategies of Mahjong so you can get into the game, both in video game form and in real life, because it is just such a rewarding game to play. So the first step to understanding Mahjong is to understand the different kinds of tiles there are. And I'm going to show that to you with my Nintendo Mahjong set, of all things. These are the circles or the pin tiles, and like the majority of Mahjong tiles, they range in number from 1 to 9. Obviously, whatever number pin is on the tile, that's the number it represents. Then we have, I'll get these out here, in a similar vein, we have the bamboo tiles. These are called the So tiles, and they go from 1, which has the bird on it, again all the way until 9. And the number tiles. Number tiles, same concept, although you have the characters for the number, so you just kind of have to memorize these. Some games will actually put the number on top, but obviously ranging from 1 to 9. So this takes a little bit of memorization. And then finally, you have the so-called word or honor tiles. You see these here. These are the wind tiles. Go from east, south, west, and north. And then you have the dragon tiles, green, red, and white. And some games, based on different rule sets, will use these red number tiles. It's kind of like a score multiplier. And they're not just the pins, they come in the numbers and the bamboos. So in a certain sense, you do have to memorize these last 2 trays, but it is not too difficult. So let's talk about the basics of a Mahjong hand. There's 136 tiles in the game, and each player at any given time will usually have 13 tiles, and you're constantly drawing and discarding to get the 14th to complete a hand. So you need 14 tiles, and here you can see that I have a near complete hand. Basically, you need to create triplets and pairs. Most of the time you're going to be creating triplets. So you can see I have the 1, 2, 3 of the number tiles, the 1, 2, 3 of the pins, the 1, 2, 3 of the bamboos. This is admittedly a higher value, rarer hand, but it kind of explains what we want to do in Mahjong. And I have a hand that is waiting on 2 tiles to win. This is typically what you want to do. You want to get a weight of, I have 6 and 7, so I'm waiting on 5 or 8. So if I were to draw, for example, the 8, that would be a winning hand. Usually I would sort of put it over to the side. So I'd have my 3 colors straight, I'd have my other triplet, 6, 7, 8, and I'd have my 1 pair. You always need to have 1 pair, usually, to create a winning hand in Mahjong. And so you just draw and discard, and you try to create a hand like this. So you have, consecutive numbers, 6, 7, and you try to build that hand as efficiently as possible. Here's another example of a hand where I'm relying on triplets. Again, this is a rarer, higher value hand, but I have my, in this case, 4 triplets. I've got my red dragons, my white dragons, and I have wind tiles, in this case the east wind, and I have my 2, I have my pair, I have my 2 twos, and again, this would be a winning hand. You're not likely to see this, but this is the basic concept that you would do with any of the tile types. You can have 4 triplets, 3 triplets, you can mix and match. You just want groups of 3 plus a pair. This is the one exception to that rule. This is a hand, it's called a Chioitsu, and it is 7 pairs. I'm not going to say it's not very likely. It's a kind of hand you can build when you realize, hey, I've got 3 or 4 pairs, and I think I can go for this. It can be, it's not a super high value hand, but if you have certain tile types, which I'll talk about in a little bit, it can be a fairly aggressive hand, because just having these tiles is a winning condition. And we'll talk about winning conditions in a little bit, but just so you know, this exists, but the idea is that you want to build triplets, whether sequential or of a specific tile type, and then have one pair. Alright, so let's talk about winning conditions and ready hands. This is unique to Japanese Mahjong. What you see here is would be a more typical, what we call reach or ready hand. And it satisfies a couple of different winning conditions. So if you take all the rules that I just explained, you nonetheless have to have a specific type of hand that gives you a specific point value. I'm not going to go into calculating points because that's one of the more complicated aspects of Mahjong. But the good thing is, when you're playing online, when you're playing a Mahjong video game, the computer does that for you. So as you're just learning the game, you don't really need to know all of the scoring intricacies. You'll pick up some of these key hands, and you'll pick up some strategy that will let you figure out, what is a high value hand, what is not a high value hand. But basically, this hand fills a couple of different winning conditions. That's what we call a Yaku. And a Yaku is just basically, I have this quality to my hand, this is how I can win. And one of the easiest is to have 3 dragons. You have 3 dragons, you have a winning condition. It's not a super high value hand, but you have that. Beyond that here, I have my pair. I've got a 5, 6, and 7. I've got 3 7s, and I'm waiting on a 2 or 3. That, incidentally, is another winning condition, to be having a 2-sided wait. So I am now in Tenpai, which is basically to say that my hand is ready. I'm 1 away from winning. And what happens if you're playing with real people, or if you're playing on a video game, it will say Richi, and you can click on it. Or if you're playing in a real game, you say reach, and you put down this 1,000-point betting stick. So it's going to cost me 1,000 points to let other players know that my hand is ready. And it's kind of an aggressive move. It tells them, watch out, this hand could possibly win, and it gets them into thinking about discarding. And we'll talk about discards in a little bit. But basically, this hand is ready, and I can win on either a 4 or a 1. And by the way, you wouldn't put the 1 or the 4, in between the betting stick, just for illustrative purposes. So I could have 1, 2, 3, or I could have 2, 3, 4 as my winning hand. This is basically what you want to do. You want to create situations where you have consecutive numbers next to each other. So, when I draw the 7, I kick something out, I've got 5, 6, 7. That is the basic point. And the more you play, the more you'll get used to that kind of mindset and building those hands quickly. So another quick note on winning conditions. In addition to having 3 of the green, red, or white dragons, you can do this also with some of the wind tiles. Typically, a Mahjong has 2 rounds, we'll call it. It has an east wind round and a south wind round. And if you have 3 of the round winds, in other words, you have 3 of the east tiles in the east round, 3 of the south tiles in the south round, that is a winning condition. And each player, as you play the game, will have what they call a seat wind. You'll be assigned one of the 4 winds. And let's say, for example, I'm north, and I collect 3 north tiles. That is a winning condition. And while the advanced player may not always take advantage of just going for, 3, a triplet of the wins, I think as a starting player, if you can do that, you can basically build a hand quickly, score some points, win some rounds, and it'll carry you through to the more advanced strategies. Now, when you're playing Mahjong, you have the option to open up your hand, and that is you're going to claim tiles from other players. This is not something I'd recommend for a beginner in Mahjong. There's certain circumstances where it can get you into trouble, it can devalue your hand, but you may want to do it at a couple different points in the game. When you take tiles from other players, I guess we can categorize this into three types. You have a pawn, P-O-N, in the software, and this is you're making, three of a kind from another player. And this is a pawn of red dragons, and if you're playing with real people, you indicate, oh, I took this from the guy on my right, so I put it that way, or I take it from the guy on my left, I have the tile leaning that way, or I guess if it's straight ahead, you just have it like that, and you kind of move it to the right side of the table. Again, this is a good one because this is a winning condition, open or closed. So I can make that call, I can have this pawn, and it kind of tells players, hey, I'm going for a quick win. This is a chi, C-H-I, and I can only call, I can call this one from any player. I can only call this from the player to my left. And the cheese are something that I would avoid because, again, it's going to devalue your hand. In a couple of cases, you may want to do it. If you're approaching the end of the game, no one's indicated that they have a ready hand, and you want to, build a ready hand as quickly as possible, that might be a time to open up your hand because then you can get a tenpai payment when a game ends and you're ready and the other players are not. You can get between 1,000 and 3,000 points, depending on how many other players are ready. Of course, if everyone's ready, you don't get anything. Again, I would shy away from this. This is called a kan, K-A-N. This is an open, this is a closed kan. Open kan is, let's say this is my, I've opened this up, this is my seat wind, and someone discards the fourth north tile. I can call that. And this is going to open up an opportunity for me to get an extra, what they call Dora or lucky tile. I'll talk about that in a bit. It's essentially a gamble that says, hey, I'm going to call this. It may change up my strategy, but it gives me an opportunity to earn more points. And this is a closed kan. In other words, I have three of these in my hand, and I draw a fourth. I can open up my hand like that. Again, it changes your strategy a little bit. There are some higher level hands that do this. It's not something that I would necessarily recommend for a beginning player, but again, these will be all options for you in the software. So next up, I want to talk about the concept of Dora, or lucky tiles. This is, part of the gambling aspect of Mahjong. In addition to having set point values for your hands, and again, if you're the dealer, you're going to make a little bit more. There are these random elements, and one of them is called the Dora, or lucky tile. So in any game of Mahjong, you have what they call a dead wall. At the beginning of the game, one of these tiles will be flipped, like that. That is the Dora indicator. So it tells me that the next tile in the sequence is the lucky tile. So if I see the 1, that means that the 2 is the Dora. Now, some games that you play will just show you that, and you have to know the next in the sequence is the lucky tile. The score multiplier tile usually gives you an extra 1,000 points. Some games will sort of have this, up in the corner to let you know that it's the Dora. So, they do this. Why isn't that the lucky tile? Well, there's 4 ones, 1 bamboos. So, obviously now if that's there, there's 3. So you want 4 lucky tiles floating around the game. If you do the con strategy, you call 4 of a kind, then they flip over another tile. So now the 8 is a score multiplier tile. And of course, if you have these in your hand value increases exponentially. And then some variants of Mahjong, when you win, they'll flip over another tile, depending on the rule set. And so in this case, the 2 would be also a score multiplier. And, depending on which software you play, what the rules are, that may or may not be the case. It's called the Dora. But you will definitely play with the top Dora. So if you have these score multipliers, also considered a Dora are the red 5s. Again, this particular set only has the red pin 5, but when you play on these different software platforms, different video games, there are red 5s in every suit. So, you'll have a red 5 bamboo, red 5 number, red 5 pin. These are also Dora. So you always want, at the beginning of the game, to look at the Dora indicator. I make this mistake all the time. Sometimes you want to play, you get into a game of Tenhou online or something, and you don't necessarily identify the Dora, but it's absolutely key. In fact, I'm going to turn these over. You must, at the beginning of every game, live or in video game form, as soon as the game starts and that tile is flipped over, you want to look at that tile, because you don't want to do that and knock over the other tiles. You always want to look at that tile because that is going to influence the strategy of building your hand. So now we have to talk about discards. When you discard a tile, it goes into what's called the pond. So every player can see every tile that you've discarded. So let's say that I've just said, okay, my hand is ready, or any player says their hand is ready. They put down the 1,000 points, and then what they do is they turn the tile like this. So I know that on the 8th turn, I declared that I'm ready, and I lay the tile down like that. This means that I, as a player, cannot change my hand at this point. I have a weight, hopefully a two-sided weight, and every tile I get, I just have to discard. This tells the other players hey, pay attention to what's down here. Because since I can't change my hand, it means that every other player knows that this is a safe tile. Everything that I've discarded is a safe tile. And we'll just go with that for now. That is the case in every game you play, basically. Maybe there's rule variations and other things like that, but when you play online, that's the case. So another player sees that, okay, well, I've declared ready there, so this is safe, that's safe, and maybe on the next go-around I throw down a 1, that is a safe tile. So what you want to get in the habit of doing, and this is one of the skills that evolves over time, is reading other people's piles to see, what could be a safe tile. So if I look at this, and I just pick these at random, since the 3 and the 4 is down and the 1 is down, I'm probably not building a 2, 3, 4 or a 4, 5, 6, or especially a 2. 2 would likely be safe. The other thing you have to see is, well, I have a lot of number tiles. I only have 1 of the bamboo tiles, so perhaps that is less safe than the number tiles. So you really want to analyze things. Again, it takes a long time to know that, but for basic defense, you can say, well, my next discard is the west wind, and so west is safe. And when someone declares Ricci, you want to start thinking defensively. Not always, but certainly as a beginner, you want to start thinking defensively. There are other strategies. One is called, we'll just call it an associated number strategy. So if basically the number plus or minus 3 in either direction is typically safe. In other words, well, 1 plus 3, 4, and then the 7 would be safe. 9, 3, 6, 5, 2, 8, and so forth. That's not always going to be the case, but it's another way if you're in a jam and you don't have any of these tiles and you're not really sure, you don't have end tiles, 1s and 9s, you don't have any win tiles, and you have to make a call. Just look at what's out there and then add or subtract 3 from it. If you have one of those tiles, you can lay it down. But these are this is a very, very meaningful part of the game. And lastly, how do you actually win? How do you call? How do you announce a win? We talked about winning conditions. I have that here. I have my 3 dragons. I have a 2-sided weight, so let's say I throw down the Ricci. I let everyone know that I'm 1 away from winning. If I wanted to be devious, maybe I don't do that because I already have a winning condition, although putting this down is an extra winning condition. So let's just say I put it down, and now I'm waiting. I'm waiting on a 2 or a 5. So if I draw a 2, in other words, we go around, my next draw is a 2, I win. That's a sumo, or self-drawn victory. However, as let's say that doesn't come up right away, but another player discards either a 5 or a 2, I can call that, and that's a ron, O-R-N. I would yell that out, and then if I do that, that player has to pay me the full value of the hand. So this is a really aggressive thing, in Mahjong. Maybe I'm targeting that person. Maybe I've looked at their strategy. Maybe I think, oh boy, if I put down a Ricci and I can see that these tiles might be coming out, I can bait them into that. Again, very advanced strategy. I can say run and take it from them. If I just self-draw it, then all the players have to pay me the value of the hand. In other words, we have the hand value divided by 3, and they each pay me, assuming that I'm the dealer. If someone else is the dealer always wins a little bit more and pays a little bit more if it's a self-drawn win. So this is one of the most satisfying aspects of Mahjong. You can really go after someone, or just waiting, and you never know, am I going to draw it or am I going to call it from someone? So there you have it. Basic strategy, basic rules for playing what I think is the best tabletop game in the world, whether, again, actual in a tabletop or in video game form. I'm going to post some links below to other resources so you can have a more thorough explanation, and a couple of different online games that I think are pretty good. But what you have to do is play. Don't be afraid to play. Don't be afraid to experiment. The online culture is fairly anonymous in the sense that, at least I don't do a lot of chatting. It's all in Japanese, so I can't do it anyway. But if you know the rules, you can play. And again, very simple. Triplets, 3 of a kind. Number sequences, always put sequential numbers next to each other. Discard what you can't use. Pay attention to winning conditions. As you play, you'll learn the winning conditions, and always try to end on a 2-sided weight. I could go 3, 4, 5. I could go 2, 3, 4. I drew the 2. I had a winning condition. I have an extra lucky tile. Maybe the 9 was the Dora, which means, it just loops back to 1. So this could be a high value hand. Give it a shot. It's so much fun. It's a game you can play for the rest of your life. And let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below.